it's going to look really nice. It's getting there quite nicely. Been fairly smooth so far. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to part 14 of the Tamiya 1/48 scale Phantom F-4B build. So this is the F-4B we've been building over all these mini sessions and it's looking pretty close to complete. So we've got just pretty much a cockpit left to do. We did the seats last week. So I've got the seats just sitting here. We'll be moving on to the pilots next. So that's going to be step 55. And on the bottom here, I did a little bit of the washing. I think I'll do some more washing. It gives it an opportunity for things to dry, and even if I leave them for longer, like this stuff here, I haven't touched up yet, we can still clean up all that wash at a later stage. So how about I apply some wash on this and then I can concentrate on the pilots, and then perhaps I can even put some wash on the seats once I finish that up. Okay, so all right, let's start with, I've got my wash here. So this is a Tamiya oil-based enamel. This is really good to use because oil naturally has a very low surface tension, so it flows easily. You may be able to see here where some of this excessive wash here has actually gone into these panel lines naturally by itself. And that just shows how easily it flows. And then if you do get excess, like I just slathered that on in these areas, I'm going to be cleaning that up with a bit of enamel thinner at a later stage. So how about we just apply this around all these different spots. So it's good to get into here because this is where I've got the drop tank. And by leaving the drop tank off, makes it easy to get to these details. So I won't spend much time on this, probably just a few minutes. Now I'm using black for this particular panel wash. Depending on the colors that you use, if it's a light gray, perhaps you don't want to go as stark as a black. So you could go for just a gray or a dark gray. But since I'm not painting this, and this is more of a demonstration type piece, then the black works best, I think. Gives a massive contrast, so you can see exactly where all the surface detail is. So you notice some parts like this area here, they're quite fine panel lines, so it doesn't flow that well. So it's sitting across the top, but that's not a problem. Once we clean it up with a little bit of thinner, it'll look really nice and subtle.
Hello, ma'am.
And a few people there looking for their mum, I think. But I think they've moved along because they've found mum. Alright. So I might just finish off this end bit here. Might do a little bit on nozzles because I'm interested to see how they'll come up. There's a lot of fine detail there that you won't see at the moment. Simply because everything's still in its raw plastic, it looks probably, it's very hard to see the contrast and all those details. Let's just slather it on. Okay. Doesn't matter if you go really, really heavy with this stuff. Just means you do have to clean up a little bit more, but you don't have to be worried that it's going to make a mess. All right, I think what I'll do for the moment for panel washing, I guess we'll just spend a few minutes here and there. We'll be able to get this fully washed. I'll hold it at various angles, you'll be able to see where I've applied it. And compared to a bare area like this, or even here, you can see how it's picking up some finer details. Okay, so I'm going to park this back over here while I work on the next steps. Okay, so we've got our seats. Still got my wheels there, I'll put those on at the very end. We'll move on to step 55, which is the pilots. Okay, so we're going to, I think we've got them here somewhere. Here we go. So here's the base figure of the pilot. The base figure is the same for both pilots, and there's alternative arms to make them look a bit more natural. So I'll cut these out and then we'll trim them off. Right, so there's one. Let's get his helmet here. All right, now I just need to find the arms. I had them here before. Here we go. All right, so over here, 26 and 25 for the pilot. 26, 25. Let's just cut this out like this. That way I can keep them together. And then this is for the co-pilot. Okay, well, let me just put on my mag visor, see what's going on. And I'll just give these a quick clean up. Now when it comes to figures, they'll generally have a seam that's all the way down the side. So sometimes it does look a bit more natural if we scrape that down and get some more organic looking folds happening, because we want this to look realistic even though we're not painting it. Because seam lines can be spotted a mile away. Alright, so actually looking at it, the seam lines are along here. They're actually really, really clean. A lot of other figures, these would be very pronounced. So this only needs a very light scrape. And seeing that most of these seam lines are going to be along the side, you won't see them because I'll be covered up with cockpit detail as well. But if you really want to make it look nice, then you can sort of make sure that these edges are sharp. As you can see, I'm just following with the blade of the knife to sharpen these edges. And go to this side here and then clean up the feet. Now again, the feet don't need to be cleaned too well because you're not going to be seeing those at all, but it's always nice to have everything as clean as possible. Alright, so a bit of a scrape down the inside here. And then we do little seams on the other side. It's really not very many at all. Just around the belt, I'll clean it up a little bit. And along the shoulders. Probably spend a little bit more time on the shoulders because they're easily seen across the top. Okay. All right, so we've got one body there done. Just because we do exactly the same thing with this other torso and legs here. Alright, so now we just clean up the feet. A couple little nubs here. Insides of the legs. And then the other side. Okay, alright, so we've got our second body. Now I'll do the heads with the helmets. Now it's great how it's just had one nub at the back. Now if you carefully just trim that off, we're going to give that a quick sand because there is a little seam line there too, and then we'll get that to have a nice round finish. Right, so okay, so it's going to be a very fine seam line across the front of that visor. Give it a gentle sand. All right, that's good there. All right, one helmet. Okay, now we do the same thing on this side. And then again, we'll just spend a little bit of time on the visor. Okay, there we go. 2 torsos, 2 helmets. Now I'm going to do the arms at separate times, so I'll do these ones first, just so I don't get these mixed up. I'm not going to put them on permanently yet because they're meant to be aligned with the throttle control and also with the joystick. So I'll just tack them on later with a touch of glue. But before that, we'll just clean up the seam line. A bit more scraping. Okay, that's one. A little bit of a nub here. Okay, so let's have a look here. Now they seem to have a square type locating point on them. So it should only glue in one particular spot. That's a really nice joint actually. Let me just pop a drop of glue in there. Okay, then we do the other one. So that when we drop this into the cockpit, if it doesn't quite match, we'll still be able to break these arms off and reposition them. But with any luck, these are going to be pretty spot on. It's a bit hard to align. Let's just pop the glue there before we push the parts together. Okay, so there's our pilot here. He's got his right hand grasping the joystick and then left hand holding onto the throttle. Looks really nice there. Alright, now let's put on this helmet and head. Alright, so it's meant to match up there. Okay, so let me just apply some glue. So they fit really snug. You can't really get it wrong in a location. Just want to make sure that his oxygen hose matches the hose section on his chest. And then let's just put a bit more glue there to make it more permanent around his head, because I'm pretty certain that's going to be right. We'll leave the arms for the moment so we can still adjust them later. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to brush across those areas which I scraped with some liquid cement. So what this is going to do is going to take those really rough scrape type finish and it's going to smooth it out and polish it up. I'm doing that because I'm not painting it and I want to make sure those sections are smooth, so when the wash goes on it doesn't bring out the rough texture I've created by scraping and sanding. Right, so I've just done the back of the helmet, the visor. Now I just quickly do the sides where I've scraped it all over. Around the shoulders. Okay, so there's our pilot figure. He's ready to get put into the cockpit shortly. Okay, now let's do the co-pilot. Same sort of thing. I'll just cut off his arms, trim them, put them on loosely, and then readjust it once we've got it in the cockpit. All right, so let's get rid of that bit of sprue. Okay. Alright, so gently scraping it down. Just getting it sort of organic looking, just trying to take off that really mechanical looking seam line. Okay. All right, let's put these arms on. Okay, so 1 drop of glue in there. Right, so this arm, well, the hand is resting on his knee. Then on this side, I guess he's probably doing the same sort of thing. Yep. Okay, and the arms fit really well. So since I don't have to worry about these matching up with any control surfaces, I'll apply some more glue and make these permanent. So more glue along the arms, around the pits and such, and then a little bit underneath the hands to tie him in to his legs. Okay, and now we'll do the helmet. Again, we just want to make sure that the oxygen pipe matches up to the connection on his chest. A bit more glue there and around his neck. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll paint over those areas that I scraped earlier, just to smoothen them off. You don't have to do this if you're going to paint it. It can help though. Usually, if you're using a fine enough sandpaper, the paint will cover it all up. Alright, so I've got our co-pilot, our pilot here. So let me just paint on the insides of his legs because I didn't do that before. Just smoothing off those scrape marks. Okay, so our 2 figures are finished. So we've got a pilot, a radar intercept officer. So we'll move on to step 56. Okay, and that's completion of the seats. So you have your options of, if you weren't going to use any figures, there are decals for the seat belts. But since we're going to be putting the figures in, and the seat belts are already molded onto the figures, we won't worry about that. I don't have the decals anyway. So, but if you were building it, that's what you would consider here as an option. And then we've got the top section here, which is the ejection seat hoops. Let me just find those. Where are they? On D sprues. That's over here. All right, so we need 2 of those. There's one of those. Okay, so let's just trim these off. I'll give it a quick sand. And then just a gentle sand around those hoops because there may be a little bit of mold line on them. Alright, so that's done. Okay, so they're cleaned up. There's a bit of sprue, don't need that anymore. Alright, so let's put these in their place. Got a very nice positive fit to these. Alright, so we have one with with the ejection hoops. Okay, so there the seat's done. Alright, so we're going to just test fit these figures with the seats inside the cockpit. Let me just move these wheels over this side. Pilot's up here. Alright, so if I position this here, like so. Alright, so let's see. Now the seats fit in a particular way, so they need to go into this, I guess the rail for the ejection seat, and then it's pressed down. So it's sort of locking in. So we don't need to glue these actually. If we got this tight enough, these would just fit in and we'll be able to pull them out again. Okay, see how far they need to go. Alright, so it's quite a positive fit and we can still pull them out. Okay, so it's that little T section at the back of the seat that allows you to do that. Let's try that with pilot in place. Now it's a bit trickier because we need to get his legs around the instrument panel. Alright, let's just have a look at what that looks like. Oops. Okay, so we've got the pilot in. All looks to be fitting very well. His hand isn't quite in the right spot for the joystick, so I'd like to readjust that if I can. So let me see if I can get a better view on this. Maybe better to adjust the joystick itself. So now, joystick being quite thin, you can adjust it like by bending it. You have to be careful though. So I'm just giving a gentle persuasion with my tweezers here, and we'll see if we can adjust it so that it fits snugly in his hand. Well, that's looking better. Let's move it forward a bit more. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. His other hand is on the throttle, which looks okay. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Now let's try our co-pilot here. And he's sitting there quite snugly as well. Okay, so I'll see if I can get the angle right. Hopefully you can see that. The camera can focus on that. Alright, I think they look pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'll pull them out again. We'll do some wash on them before I put them in place. All right, let's pop him out, pop him out. So here's our black wash again, the Tamiya panel line accenting wash. And we'll just highlight some of these details in here. I won't be gluing in the pilots as yet. That gives me a chance to clean up this wash. Now again, you might see that there's quite a lot of it coming off because this brush was very well loaded. Doesn't really matter. We'll be wiping off most of this later on. Okay, there's one seat with a wash. You can see the vast difference there. Well, hopefully you can see it's quite small, I guess. Adds so much more definition. Okay. Okay, so I've got the wash there. Actually, I should do the pilots as well. Might as well do them at the same time. Okay, that's one figure. Okay. All right, those guys have had their wash, so they'll just sit there and get a bit of time to dry. Now I'm going to move on to step 57. So it's going to be the aft station instrument panel. Now there's a choice there. So there's two different panels you can choose from. So AC type and the B color configuration one. So I'm going to do the B one because it's got a few extra bits and pieces on there. And yeah, we'll start putting that together. So that's S12. So over here, so we've got the two panels there you can choose from. So I'm just going to choose this one because it's got a little bit more surface detail. Since this is not going to be any specific aircraft, I'm just going to mix and match some bits that I think look interesting. All right, so we've got that. And then S10. S14 and S17. Okay, so let's trim these bits up. Okay, that panel's clean. Side panel. That's for a little joystick. And this we just need to sand it down flat. Okay. All right, let's get our bits together. Okay, so that's a panel there. Now I'm just going to glue this into this point, and the joystick's going to be sitting onto that. Okay, and then drop a glue here. Let's get this the right way around. Okay, and then our joystick's in. We just make sure that this is nice and flat. All right, so that panel is done, and that's step 57. Now I'm going to keep these separate because if we have all these as little sub-assemblies, we'll be able to test fit them as we go. Still need to clean up that wash later as well. So this will let that dry before I do a wash on that. And now we're on to step 58. So this is attaching the cockpit sills. All right, so we have the instrument sun visor here. So that's S4. Now this is where we just want to spend a bit more time aligning things before we glue anything up. So we'll keep all this stuff loose. All right, so we have this. S2, J4 is a clear part, so I'll be adding that a bit later. That's for the head-up display. What we're looking for, S2. Oh, here we go. Okay, and then we have some more sills here. Okay, so C24 and C11, they're over here. C24, so this is a sill for the canopy. And C11, which looks like a catch. C11. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that we cut off these undergated parts. Give them a little bit of the sand as well. So let's get rid of this. Okay, let's give this a gentle sand. Make sure that's a nice straight edge along there. All right, quite nice. All right, now we'll do a test fit across here. See how that's meant to go. Oh wow, it only goes in one particular point and it's very, very snug. Okay. All right, so it looks like it's going to be working out fine. Let's just clean up these other parts, glue them on first, and we'll do some more adjustment. Okay, let's just glue this on. Right, so that's offset on the side here. Okay, head-up display we'll do later. And then let's just clean this sill up. Alright, so we're just cleaning up this sill. Pop this catch. Alright, so just pay attention which way this goes. Okay, so it just sits on the side here, I think. Okay, just make sure it's straight. Okay, and then later on, this is going to be sliding up inside there. But I think at this point, we're pretty much done step 58, but we'll call that the end of this particular session. So it's been fairly fruitful, I think. We've been able to complete the pilots, finish off the seats, done a bit of a wash on the bottom here. That's starting to dry up. And then from there, it's pretty much finishing off the canopy. Only a few more steps to go, maybe 6 or so steps. And then we'll start cleaning up all the washers. Well, we'll have to make sure we wash the rest as well, bring up all those panel lines. And it's going to look really nice. It's getting there quite nicely. Been fairly smooth so far. So here we go. There we go. That's the Phantom. You've already seen this part. That hasn't changed very much. But the main differences are we've got pilots and the seats are done. And it's pretty much just making more sub-assemblies. I'm going to be building this with the canopy open and then just making sure everything looks nice and flush there. We'll finish off all the finer details. We've got some clear parts to do as well. And then that's going to be a wrap. So thanks for joining me again, and I look forward to seeing you next time around.